Hey, we're here again at Discount Water Softeners to talk about the installation instructions and setup of your cabinet style water softener system. When you receive your cabinet style water softener, you will receive your resin tank in a separate box from the actual cabinet. To unbox the resin tank, you want to make sure that removing it, you actually remove the temporary shipping cap so that you can use the top of the tank as a handle. To remove the resin tank from the box, it's best to cut the side of the box open first, and then use the open tank as a handle to lift and pull the tank out. Keep in mind, there won't be a tank base on this tank, so you will need to prop it up somewhere until you can get it into the cabinet. Once you've unboxed the cabinet from the two boxes, you want to ensure that you received your small parts bag for the brine assembly, as well as the overflow elbow that will attach to the back corner of the cabinet. Inside the bottom of your cabinet, you'll also find the safety float assembly. This will get installed after your resin tank has been placed inside of the cabinet. When installing the resin tank inside of the cabinet, it is a good idea to either have an assistant to help you or to install it at an angle, because the resin tank is going to be extremely heavy because it will be loaded with resin. To do this, you want to make sure that you have the cap off of the resin tank, and with both hands either lift up the resin tank and drop it down into the cabinet carefully, or you can lay this down at an angle, carefully making sure that you don't spill any of the resin out of the resin tank. Once you've got your resin tank inside the cabinet, you're going to need to angle the base. To do so, you want to lift up on the tank and angle it towards the back of the cabinet. And then you can simply just slide the tank into place and it'll be secure in the area where it needs to be placed. Once you've installed the resin tank into the bottom portion of your cabinet, you're going to need to install the middle portion of the top of the cabinet. To do this, you're going to first need to install the brine well into the bottom portion of the cabinet. You can simply just place the middle portion on top without securing it, and then you want to remove the float assembly from the brine well. You'll do this by removing the small plastic screw and then pulling the entire float assembly out of the brine well. Next, you're going to drop the brine well down into the bottom portion of the cabinet. Now on your 48,000 grain, you're going to place it in the front position, which is position B. If you're at 32,000 grain, you're going to place the brine well in the back corner, which is the A position. Then you're able to slide your middle gray portion down onto the cabinet. After securing the middle gray plate into the bottom cabinet along with the brine well, you're going to drop the float assembly back into place and re-secure the nut onto the float assembly to complete the installation. Now we're ready to move on to the control valve installation onto the tank. When you receive your cabinet style Genesis water softener, you're going to receive the control valve in a box inside the bottom of the cabinet, along with any accessories that you may have chosen. You're going to just simply need to install the upper screen on the underside of the control valve. Simply insert it and turn 1/4 inch till it locks into place. You're now ready to install the control valve on your cabinet style water softener. The riser tube in the resin tank may be slightly off center. You will need to center it by hand to get your control valve as well as upper screen directly onto the riser. Once the system regenerates one time, the riser will self-correct. Making sure you tighten the control head to hand tight and then completing the tightening of the control valve to a 1/2 turn past hand tight may require some assistance from someone else to hold the resin tank inside of the cabinet to make sure you're getting a nice tight connection of the control valve. When you receive your bypass, it's going to come in a box that looks like this. When you open it up, it's actually going to be fully assembled except for the securing U-clips that come in a separate bag. So it'll actually be shrink wrapped like this in some models, and other models it'll already be opened. But you will already have your 1-inch connections on there, and you'll have additional bags with your small parts, which are your clips that clip the fittings into place. And you can always switch out the 1-inch and put your 3/4 inch in. A key step when installing your bypass into your control valve is to make sure that the articulated fittings that screw onto the back of the control valve get the flat washer type O-rings installed into the female end of the fittings before you screw them onto the control valve. Each articulated fitting is going to have a flat washer ring that goes into the female side of the fitting, and you're going to screw these fittings down until they're snug. You can use a channel lock type wrench to tighten these down further, but be careful not to over tighten as these will crack. You're now ready to make the installation of your bypass to the control valve. You're simply going to slide the bypass onto the O-rings that are in place and take your 2 U-clips and clip them on to hold it in place. So now once we've installed our bypass onto the back of the control valve, you're ready to make your connections to your plumbing. Now, plumbing connections may vary from one home to the next. In this case, we're showing copper pipes. In your home, you might have PEX, CPVC, copper, or regular PVC. So the connections may differ. Conventional plumbing methods should be used to make these connections. We do recommend someone skilled at plumbing a water softener in to do the installation. We do also have an installation kit for do-it-yourselfers, and we'll go over that here in a second. But to make your connections, you're going to have either your 3/4 inch or your 1 inch connections that are male threaded. You're going to need to make the connections either through conventional plumbing methods or use our installation kit with the Quick Pro connector kit. When you purchase your system, if you elected to get your Quick Pro connector kit as an option, you can actually use the Quick Pro connectors to install your system as a do-it-yourself install if you have copper, CPVC, or PEX piping. If you have PVC piping, the Quick Connect kit will not work for you. You want to make sure, especially on copper, that there aren't any sharp edges or burrs on the end of your copper that could pierce or cut the O-ring on the inside of the Quick Connector. To make your connection, you're simply going to push this up into your plumbing until it bottoms out, and then make sure you can't pull down on it. You're also going to want to make the same connection to your outlet side of your system and make your connection the same way as you did on your supply line. Once you've connected your Quick Pro connectors to your plumbing, you can then screw on your fittings on the back of your bypass. You can use Teflon tape to ensure that you don't get any leaks. Just a simple twice around with Teflon tape will ensure that the system has a nice, secure connection. Once you have them hand tightened down, you can put a wrench to the fittings and tighten them down further to ensure a proper connection. When you purchase your Genesis cabinet style water softener, you're going to receive a short length of brine tubing along with a brine nut as well as tube insert to make your connection to your control valve. To make the brine connection for your Genesis water softener in your cabinet style system, you're going to first make the connection to your float assembly. This is a quick connect fitting that just requires that you simply push the assembly completely down into the assembly until it bottoms out. On your other end, you're going to simply attach your securing nut along with your tube insert and screen into the tubing. Now you can make your connection into the control valve by simply inserting all the way until it bottoms out and then tighten down your compression nut until it's hand tight, and then pull on the tubing to make sure it doesn't come out. You also want to make sure at this time that your meter assembly is installed inside the bypass on the left-hand side between the control valve and the bypass handle. You'll simply slide the gray tab into the connection until it clicks. The final step of your Genesis cabinet-style water softener installation requires that you add the cover to your system. You're simply going to slide down the lid over the top until it clicks into place, and you're ready to go. To access the control valve as well as adding salt to your cabinet-style system, you're simply going to slide the cover back, and you'll add salt in through the front opening. There's also a hinge clear cover that you can remove to access the control to do any programming or manual regenerations. Once the assembly of your cabinet-style water softener is complete, you can simply add 40 pounds of salt and 5 gallons of water to the cabinet. If you wait 6 hours while the salt dissolves in the water, you'll form a complete brine, and you can simply do a manual regeneration. Once that manual regeneration is complete, you'll have softened water. Let's get right down to programming. Programming this system is very simple. We do a lot of the programming ahead of time for you. When you first plug it in, your system is actually going to show you the time of 12:12. Now, this system's already been partially programmed before, so it goes right to the main screen. But to navigate around with this system, the button all the way on the left allows you to get into the programming area. Okay, you can enter in our company information if you'd like. We don't pre-program it in there, but you can do that if you'd like. Set time of day, you're going to arrow down, and once that's highlighted, you push this button, and it allows you to set hours. You can up arrow, down arrow. To confirm, you want to hit the button all the way on the left. That's confirming any setting changes that you make within here. So minutes, up, down, confirm with the button on the left, and then it'll take you back to the next setting. Same thing with the date, just arrow down. You want to set the date, up, down, wherever you want it, confirm with the button on the left, month and year. Next setting, set total capacity. Setting total capacity is done by us at our facility before it leaves our facility. This should not be changed. You want to make sure your system is regenerating at the frequency that it is supposed to. By changing this to any other capacity other than what you purchased or received is going to cause your system to not regenerate at the right time. You're either going to get soft water or you're going to go through too much salt. So recommendation is you actually just skip right over this entire capacity setting. Water hardness. This is obviously probably the most critical setting within your system. It'll come set to you at 15 grains per gallon. If you're on municipal supplied water, you can actually contact your city or even look it up on their website. They should give it to you in either grains per gallon or parts per million. You would program that by up arrow, down arrow. If you're on a private well, it's important that you get a water test done of your hardness, as well as if you have any iron or think you have iron. When you program your water softener, if you do not have an iron filter, you want to compensate for your iron when you program your system. To do that, for every part per million of iron you have, you're going to add 5 grains per gallon in the program setting. So let's, for example, say you have a 15 grain per gallon hardness and you have 2 parts per million of iron, or let's say 1.5. So you're going to multiply 1.5 times 5 and you're going to come up with 7.5. So you're going to add to your grain hardness of 15, you're going to add 7.5. Well, there are no halves in this. So instead of going to 22.5, you're going to actually be set to a 23. All right. So that's going to change according to whatever your results are, but that's what that would be is if you had 15 plus 1.5 on iron. All right. Next setting would be number of people. This setting is for the actual number of people permanently living in the home. It's not for people that are going to come visit once a week or once a month or for a weekend or even a week. You want to keep this set for the number of people that are actually permanently living in your home. All right. Next setting is your regeneration time. Comes factory set at 2 a.m. like most water softeners, and that is an ideal time because that's least likely when you're going to be using water. If you have an off schedule where you could be using a good amount of water at that time, you obviously can set this to any time that you want, but you want it set to a time when you are least likely using water, because if you use water during a regeneration, it could affect the flow, and it'll also definitely affect whether you get soft water or not. During a regeneration, you will not receive soft water. All right, so that's set. Backwash time is preset by the manufacturer. Brine draw time, that's the time that the system draws in the brine from the brine tank. That is also preset and should not be changed. Secondary backwash, if you're on a private well, this is important to have a secondary backwash if you have iron. Fast rinse, that's very important as well to get the excess brine out of the resin bed so you don't get salty water in your house. And finally, your brine refill time. This is also set by us for the size system that you have. It should definitely not be changed. The only time you should change this is if you consult us first.
because you have some circumstance where you have very high levels of other impurities in your water. But that would be something that we would need to discuss and adjust accordingly. All right. Max days for regeneration, we set to 14 days. So if you don't reach your allotted gallons by the 14th day, your system is going to regenerate as a backup anyway. This is important on private wells to make sure you don't get bacterial growth in there. It's also important just because salt can fall off of resin over time and you'll actually get hardness sneaking through. So beyond that, the only thing you really have are usage logs. So your daily water usage, your peak usage, for your days, weeks, and even months. So you can actually look in there if you want and kind of track your usage. Software version as well is in there. So none of those need to be changed. So when you get back to your main screen here, you're going to see the in-service, you're going to see the time of day, remaining gallons until it's going to regenerate next, and then also the regeneration time and the current flow rate. So this will register when you run your water, your cold water in your house. It'll actually register gallons, and it also shows you your regeneration time. So we're actually going to unplug this now. If you unplug it, all your settings are going to hold. Your time of day will actually stay on there for, I believe, up to 72 hours without power. If it's anything more than that, you'll have to reprogram your time of day. But all of the other settings we just discussed, our non-volatile memory will not be lost if you lost power or unplugged it for a year.